It's time for Orchard Skills. When creating an application for an Internet of Things device, the user experience is crucial. Poor user experience is terrible for business and can detour your customers from purchasing your devices. If the layout and design of a user experience are unclear and difficult to use, it will confuse and frustrate your clients. Today on Orchard Skills, we will be designing an Orchard Core theme customized for the Raspberry Pi Internet of Things. Please stay with us and we'll get started. Welcome back. When designing a user experience, your customers expect proper use of color and proper use of animation that is pleasing to the eye, an easy to understand layout and navigation that is appropriate to the topic. They don't want design elements that get in the way of their content. They demand an experience that's easy to search, navigate, consume, and share data. Mobile-first responsive designs are expected that accommodate a variety of devices and screen sizes. Our theme will be based on the latest version 5 of Bootstrap, the world's most popular front-end open-source toolkit, featuring Sass variables and mixins, a responsive grid system, extensive pre-built components, and powerful JavaScript plugins. We adhere to the material design style guidelines. So let's get started. I believe the best tool for creating an Orchard Core CMS web application is Visual Studio. So let's launch Visual Studio. Okay, great. Let's create a new project and let's use an ASP.NET Core web application. And let's call this application orchardskills.orchardcore.cms and hit the create button. Okay, let's scroll down or scroll up and let's click on an ASP.NET Core empty application, and let's select version 3.1 because Orchard Core is still at 3.1, but hopefully soon it will go ASP.NET 5. Let's hit the create button. Okay, great. There's our application. So the first thing we want to start with is to add the Orchard Core framework to the ASP.NET Core empty application. This will make the empty application not so empty anymore. We will need to set up a NuGet.config file to specify where the latest Orchard Core NuGet files are located. The Orchard Core community calls this the preview feed. This feed is generated by the dev brand. I will place a link in the detailed documentation where this is located and also documentation on the Orchard page. You can use the RC2 release located at NuGet.org, but that release is over 6 months old and has significant amount of missing features. To add the NuGet.config, click on the solution and then right-click and go to Add and then New Item. They don't have a config file configuration, so what I use is just a readme.txt file, and then I just rename this to NuGet.config and hit Add. And you'll notice it'll create a solution items folder and place the NuGet.config just right under that. So the NuGet.config file is just an XML file that specifies all the locations of your NuGet feeds. And let's create that. And so inside here, you have your package sources. And what you do is you do a clear, and then you add the NuGet feed, which is NuGet.org. And then after that, you add the Orchard Core preview feed. And this feed is generated by the dev brand. And then also what you do is active package source. And then you also add a key all, which aggregates all of the feeds into one. So you can either select the NuGet feed or the Orchard Core preview feed or the all feed. And I'll show you that when we configure our NuGet. Okay, great. So let's make sure we save all this. What you need to do is you need to restart Visual Studio. Otherwise, it will not read this file. Once we restart Visual Studio, then the configuration file will be read. So let's exit Visual Studio. Okay, great. And let's launch Visual Studio again. And let's click on that solution. And now our NuGet fig is loaded. Click on the project file and then right click and click on Manage NuGet Packages. And make sure that we click on the Include Pre-Releases. Otherwise, you will not see any of these NuGet files because these are all pre-releases. So click on the Browse and we will want to search for Orchard Core application.cms.targets. And you'll notice here that there's two of them because we have the all sources selected. So let's select just the Orchard Core preview feed. And so the latest NuGet package is 15740. So click on that and click on install. then hit OK, and then I accept. Okay, we loaded the target snippet. Okay, we'll have to add another one, and this is the logging. So it's kind of important to have logging for debugging purposes, and if something goes wrong, then we can take a look at the log file. So I would strongly suggest adding the logging file, which we'll do right now. So in the search here, we'll go ahead and delete all the way up to application and do logging. And there you go, the Orchard Core log and log. Click on that, click install, hit OK, and we're all good. Great. So now we exit this and exit this. If we click on the project file, you notice that here it added 2 NuGet files to your project. All right, great. So on the project file, we'll need a nlog.config file to specify our logging configuration. So right click and add new item. And again, they don't have a configuration file, but we can select a text file. And then what we do is we specify nlog.config and click add. And there we go. And this file is also an XML file. And let's paste that. And you notice up here, there's some documentation how to use this. And you have your different levels of logging. You have fatal, error, warn, info, debug, and trace. And so if you want to change your logging levels, you just go ahead and change it right here. And currently it's set to warn, but if you want to go down to debug or trace, all you need to do is specify that here. And there we go. We have our nlog.config file all set up. Okay, let's go to program.cs here, and we can go ahead and click on here and remove unnecessary usages. Paste. We'll use orchard.logging and our usings. And for this, we kind of want to set up our build host in that. So we want to change this a little bit here. And what we'll do, you'll notice where clear providers is not specified there, but if we also include Microsoft extensions.logging, then that warning will go away. And also, since we're using a task, we'll need system.threading.tasks. And there we go. We got our program.cs. And you'll notice here that it specifies a startup, and then after that, it uses the nlog web. So next, we'll go ahead and go to our startup file. So we'll click on that. And so for here, under the configure services, we're going to need services.add_orchard_cms. And basically that's where we enabled Orchard Core. And then down further here, we don't need any of this anymore because we're going to use Orchard Core. We can just replace that with app.useOrchardCore because all of that gets set up through Orchard Core now. And there we go. We just enabled this ASP.NET Core application with the Orchard Core framework. I noticed here I accidentally deleted this curly bracket, so I just added that here back. And let's build the application, run it and test it and to make sure everything is working. So let's go up here and hit the green play triangle to start building our application and then running it. Okay, great. Everything is up and running. So let's select Orchard Skills for the name of our website. And let's select the blog theme. Let's enter our credentials, put in username, email, password, and also confirm password. And then press on the Finish Setup button. Okay, great. It's all working. Now let's go into the dashboard, specify /admin, re-enter our credentials, click on the Remember Me checkbox, and click on Login. And there we go. We're in the admin. So we go into Contents, Content Items, and there's our content items. So everything looks like it's working. So now that we have the code completed for the scaffolding infrastructure in place, we can now create our Orchard Core theme for the Raspberry Pi. So click on Solution, right-click, Add, New Project, and we can click on Class Library.NET Core, go to Next, and we can call this Orchard Skills.OrchardCore.Raspberry Pi theme. Click on Create, and there we go. So the first thing we want to do is click on the project file. Want to add a .razor to that, and also we want to add razor support for MVC. Instead of going through Manage NuGet Packages, let's just add them directly in our project file. That's a lot easier. So let's add those. And so we'll need the orchardcore.module.targets, orchardcore.admin.abstractions, orchardcore.contentmanagement, orchardcore.resourcemanagement, orchardcore.displaymanagement, orchardcore.users.abstractions, orchardcore.users, orchardcore.menu, orchardcore.menu.abstractions, orchardcore.setup.abstractions, finally orchardcore.setup. And we'll go through these NuGet packages, what they do later on, but let's just start out by initially specifying these NuGet packages. Okay, great. And for our class, let's go ahead and rename this, and let's call this startup.cs, and we'll just say yes there. So let's just create all the files that we need for our theme. So let's create a controllers directory. So let's add a new folder, and we'll call this controllers. We'll also need a recipes directory. Right click, add new folder, recipes. We'll also need a views folder. Add new folder. We'll also need a www root folder. We'll also need a manifest.cs. So we'll say add new item. We'll just call it a class. And we'll specify manifest.cs. Hit add. And we'll also need a resource manifest.cs. And we'll also specify a class. And under our controllers, let's add a new item. And let's just select an empty controller and call it homecontroller.cs and add that. Under recipe, let's add a new item. Let's select a JSON file. And in there, we will call that raspberrypi.recipe.json and hit add. And in the views, we'll have a folder, and we'll need a home. And we'll also need a shared. And inside the home, let's add an empty razor view. Let's call that index.cs HTML. And under shared, let's add, and let's call this login menu.cs HTML. Add. And under the view, we'll need a layout.html. Add that. And let's also add a view imports underscore view imports. Add that. Add new item. And we'll do a branding .cshtml. And a menu.cshtml. And let's do menu item.cshtml. Add a new item. And let's call this menu item link dash context menu item.cshtml. And for the last one, we'll add a new item, menu item link dash link menu item.cshtml, and add that. Okay, great. I understand that we created folders and files and we didn't explain the reason behind this process. I just wanted to give you a sense of the scope of how many files are needed. We'll go into detail and describe each of these folders and files. By the way, we haven't added any HTML, CSS, or JavaScript files. These files will also be needed for the theme. To be consistent with the Orchard Core theme naming convention, let's rename our theme project and namespace. So let's click on our theme project and rename that just to Raspberry Pi theme. Okay. And down here on the setup here, let's rename this to orchardcore.themes.raspberrypi theme. Okay, great. And for the controller, let's rename this to orchardcore.raspberrypi theme.controllers. Okay, great. And we can go ahead and remove necessary usage, save that. So our home controller basically is fine returning the view, so that's all set up for us. Now let's go to the Raspberry Pi recipe.json file here. What the recipe file does is it basically gives information to Orchard Core on how to configure your settings and the Orchard Core framework. As you can see here, it gives you just some information about the name of the recipe, the display name when you go into the dashboard, and then information about the author, website, version, and some configurations for I set up recipe to true, different tags, and then here's all the different steps. So one of the steps is to add all the different features in Orchard Core. So these are basically the SaaS features, and here's the theme, which is going to be Raspberry Pi. And then here we're basically telling the theme. We're going to use the admin theme for the admin theme, and for our site we're going to use Raspberry Pi theme. And for the name, those are themes, and for the admin theme we're going to use the admin theme, and for our site we're going to use Raspberry Pi theme. And for the settings here, for our home root, we're going to use the home index, and our area will be Raspberry Pi theme. And then also we're configuring our settings to enable change email settings, login settings, registration settings, and password settings. And you can notice here that it says use site theme for each one of these. And that's it. That's basically a basic version of it. And these can get more elaborate, and we will talk about that in future videos. Okay, let's go down to the index.cshtml in our views home directory. And for this, we're just going to display a simple message, welcome to the Orchard Skills Raspberry Pi theme. Go ahead and save that. Now let's go into our shared folder, into our login menu. So now what this menu does is basically in the theme, you'll notice in the top there'll be a login button where the user can log in. So this allows us to define our menu structure of our login. So we have basically include all the different features in Orchard Core's users, and then we define some variables here to get access to some structures. And then basically we say if the user is authenticated, we create a drop-down menu and such. Else we show some other menus. So this basically finds how the user menu is being displayed. So now let's go to our view imports.chtml. Now this is an important file to include all of the different usages and tag helpers. So it's important that this file is there so it includes all the usings. And for the branding, all this is a class that basically tells Navbar brand that this is site.sitename. And now for our next file is our layout.cshtml. Now this is a kind of the key important file that defines your HTML, kind of like your index.html file. Go ahead and implement that. And so you can see that it's a basic HTML with Razor in it. Let's save all this. And so we have your basic HTML, and then we include the material design theme CSS and all the styles.css to switch between a dark theme and a light theme. And then we also include font awesome. And then also we include the material design JavaScript. And then of course we have meta, heats, head link, style sheet, and head scripts. And this is the ASP.NET render section async. And so we're defining our navbar menu and our toggle button here. And then here's all of the different social icons on the top. And down here we have a render section async for the header. And we also have a footer section here. And we don't have that completely implemented. And then we have a function here to set the theme. So when the user clicks on the icon to set the theme, it'll switch between a light theme and a dark theme. And that's it. That's our layout.cshtml. So now let's head down to our menu.cshtml. So now this file is the menu shape that's used to render the menu. Okay. As you can see, we have a tag builder tag, and for each item, model and items, it goes ahead and appends display async item. We'll talk about the menu a little bit later. Let's go to the menu item.chhtml. Okay. And so this file is the menu item shape that's used to render a menu item. And as you can see, we have the original, in the previous file was just the menu. Now here's all the different menu items, and we have a for each for models.menu. So basically this displays the menu onto the page. And then for our menu item link, content menu item.cshtml. This is basically for the drop-down support. It just adds the menu system for the drop-down. And the next file, menu item link dash link menu item.cshtml. This is the shape for the link menu item part. this works in conjunction to the contents menu item. And the menu item link shape is used to render menu item link. The shape is created by morphing a menu item shape into a menu item link, hence all the properties available on the menu item. And if you want more information, you can go to the Orchard Core documentation, and it has detailed information about the menu and different examples, and you can switch between Liquid or Razor. And in our case, we're going to stick with Razor because we're working with the Raspberry Pi and an Internet of Things, so it makes sense to do that. And I will provide a link to this in the documentation. Okay, let's head over to our manifest.cs file. And let's implement this. This file tells Orchard Core what module this is, and this is going to be a theme. And so we have specify assembly theme, name, the Raspberry Pi theme, author, Orchard Skills, website, version. And I just go ahead and get that from the Orchard Core version. So then when that gets updated, this gets updated as well. Description, the Raspberry Pi theme, and then tags. I added Raspberry Pi, Bootstrap, and default. So let's head to the resource manifest.cs file. Let's implement this here. And so this file basically defines your resource manifest for all your CSS and JavaScript files, and for any other CDM files that are needed. This basically organizes all of this in one nice package here. And so you can see here that we're defining CSS as a Raspberry Pi theme.css, and then for JavaScript we have Raspberry Pi theme.js, and then we have some font awesome stuff. So we're utilizing those social icons in font awesome. So basically we're utilizing a CDN for that. And as you can see, we're using the latest version of Font Awesome, which currently is 5.15.1. And for our last file here will be our startup. And in there, basically we have a startup base, and we want to add a scope to our resource manifest provider, which is in the file that we were previously looking at. Okay, that's it for all the Orchard Core files. Okay, I went ahead and I added the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files and the different icons. And so now you can see here that we have our CSS for our material design Bootstrap, and we have some styles.css, and that's for switching between the light theme and the dark theme. We have some icon images, and then we have some images, which is the light and sunny button on top, and then we have a JavaScript file for the material design Bootstrap, and then we have favorite icon and our theme.png, which is just a picture of our theme, so that when you're in the admin you can see the actual theme image. And that's it. Next, we want to right-click on dependencies in the Orchard Skills at orchardcore.cms project, and we want to add project reference, and we want to make sure that we have a project reference to the Raspberry Pi theme, and then hit OK. And one more thing is we want to go ahead and delete the app data directory. And I usually also delete the bin directory, the localization directory, and the obj directory so that I get a clean build. So I just do right-click and hit delete, and they're all gone. And now let's go ahead and run the application. Let's go up and hit the green little play triangle button. And there we go. We have our setup page. So let's go ahead and enter in our site name. And it defaults to the Raspberry Pi theme. Let's enter our username, our email, our password, and our confirm password, and then hit the finish setup button. And there we go. There's our theme. So you can notice that we have our logo here, our name, Orchard Skills, and then we have a button to switch from the dark theme to light theme and vice versa. And then we have our social media icons, and then we have our menu. And you can see here we have a login and register. If we click on the login, we have a login button. If we click on register, we have a registration. And that's all built into Orchard Core. And there we go. We actually completed an initial theme for the Raspberry Pi, and we will expand on this in future videos. Now, if you missed or didn't understand something, that's okay. There's a detailed blog post that describes all the steps. There is also a GitHub repository with the complete source code. All this information is in the video description. If you like this video, please click on the thumbs up icon. Also, please subscribe and click on the bell icon to get a notification when I release the next video. Thank you for watching.